Welcome to the BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me is the man who takes it to the next level, Kyle Kraus.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Sega!
And that's launch a new system in 2017? No, that's not right. Never mind.
Well, they already made perfection with the Dreamcast. Why compete with anything else, honestly?
Yeah, why even bother? Yeah, that's why they quit, because they're like, we can't do any better. I don't think anybody can do any better, so we're just going to stop.
Yeah, once you reach the stars, what's the point?
Exactly.
You know, they set the pedestal and watch the others just try.
Pretty much.
Dry cough.
Hello, Ian. How are you doing today?
I am on pins and needles, Kyle, because as of this recording, tomorrow, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild comes out.
Yes.
And I don't think I've quite frothed at the mouth enough about this. I'm super excited for that game.
Reviews are pouring in and they are glowing, so...
I want it so bad. So, if you don't hear from me for the next 2 months, you know where I am.
Uh-oh. Hey, we got a show to do. Come on. We still got to at least entertain the peoples. Although maybe they'll all be playing Breath of the Wild too, so we don't have to worry about it.
True. If the entire world is all in the same game, then who cares?
Exactly. All right. Well, all right. We'll see you in a couple months.
That and Leah and I just finished our first viewing of Doctor Strange. Missed it in the theaters, but got it on the on-demand TV cable network thingy. So finally got to see that.
Very nice. How'd you like that?
It was cute. I'm kind of glad I didn't pay full ticket price for it, but It wasn't bad.
I liked it too, but yeah, it's not my favorite Marvel movie so far, so... But I did like it, so...
I mean, it definitely falls prey to the... Great White Hope trope. But I really liked how they set up, what's his name? Mordo, excuse me.
Mordo.
I'm not quite on the ball with all my Doctor Strange lore, but I loved how they set up Mordo as an adversarial character.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that the finale was kind of an inverse of your typical big final fight in the city thing.
That's
Avoiding
true,
spoilers for the people who may have not yet seen it, even though it's been out for, 3 months, 4 months?
Yeah, it came out in November.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah, I did like that. It was kind of like, there's going to be a big city battle, but then they kind of changed it up a bit, which was pretty cool. I like that a lot. And the effects were great, I would say.
Oh, they were stunning.
Yeah, they looked really good, so... I've also been gearing up for a big launch that I've been looking forward to for a while. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who've also been looking forward to it. They are definitely super excited. I'm, of course, talking about AMD's new Ryzen CPUs launching this week. Now, if you're like a tech enthusiast today, computer nerd like I am, then that is fairly exciting news because Intel's been dominating the CPU market for the last decade, and AMD just hasn't had anything really competitive with them, and now they finally might. It's looking like they might, which is good news, and they're undercutting Intel's prices by over half. So,
good gracious.
Yeah, so that's really good. So
and
that's
for those of you who don't follow, it's a thing to make your computer go fast.
Yeah. It's the central processing unit of your computer, which I think most people know that by now. But
you'd be surprised.
I know. I'm just saying. I give people a little more credit sometimes. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've got my order in for it just because I'm pretty excited about it. So it's going to be a considerable upgrade over what I have now. So that should help. Actually, you know what it's going to do? It's going to improve this show. And you know how I know that? Because it means I can edit the video faster. So you're welcome.
Are you going to cannibalize a rig you have now, or are you going to build a whole new rig based around this?
Oh, I'm going to just drop in a new motherboard and processor and RAM and call it a day. My old one's going to go into my girlfriend's computer. So, kind of recycling. I'm not just throwing circle of life. I'm not just throwing this stuff out. I mean, come on, that would just be a waste. It's still good. It's still a fine computer. My computer runs fine, but
Sure.
I want the shiny new thing because I can. I don't normally do that very often, so this is my one chance to splurge, I guess.
Go for the shiny new thing, Kyle.
Yes.
Mockingjay that.
Yes. I'm going to do that. So, but yes, it will improve this show. And huge thanks to the patrons who make that possible over at patreon.com/BumbleKast.
We do really have a very good group of straight up loyal and generous people. It's almost spooky.
Yes, it's great, though. I really like it. You guys are awesome. And we want to give back to you. So we're going to do that with the BumbleRaffle.
Now, the BumbleRaffle is a contest we have every show where somebody is randomly selected to receive an autographed book from me. It's a completely random draw. If you are a patron over at patreon.com/BumbleKast, you are automatically entered into every single show. And if you are not a patron, you just need to write in for each show that you want to be part of the raffle. So this show's winner is...
Damo! Damo?
Damo?
Damo? I'm unsure of your pronunciation, but it's Damo. Congratulations, you have won.
We'll be getting in touch with you to ask how and where you want us to send that book. So be on the lookout for it.
Yes, very nice.
Now, Kyle, you had a very specific idea for today's episode, today's topic. Would you like to share with the gentle people what you want to talk about today?
Yes, well, with the Nintendo Switch... when you're listening to this, it will have just launched. I figured it was a good time to go back and talk about the Sega Genesis. I mean, that makes sense to me, right? Does it make sense to you, Ian?
I'll run with it.
Okay. I mean, we've already done plenty of shows on the Switch. Do we have anything to add about that?
Not right now, especially since there's no way in high heaven I'm getting a hold of one.
Yeah. So you'll have to go elsewhere for some Switch content. But if you're in the mood for some good old Sega content, we got you covered. This episode is going to be all about the Genesis Classic Edition. Now, this was an idea that I had was, what if Ian and I were tasked with choosing 30 games to go in a hypothetical Sega Genesis mini system, kind of like the NES Classic Edition that came out last year that had 30 games built into it. We decided, okay, if we were going to build a Sega Genesis, what games would we put in it?
And this is not limited to first-party games. These are games that we've played that we enjoyed back on the Genesis back in its heyday. So, this is a fantasy scenario. Anything goes.
Right, exactly. Licensed games, anything, practically anything. Also, I do want to say that there are those, before anyone mentions it, there are those Genesis mini consoles out there now, but they're crap. So we'll just ignore the fact that they exist and hope that maybe Sega comes to their senses and releases a good version.
An actual first-party, solidly made, not bought out of a kiosk in the mall for $20 kind of thingy.
Yeah, those things are. I'm so ashamed of those things because they're they horribly mangle the audio quality, and it's the only thing I like about them is that they can use classic Genesis controllers and cartridges, which is a feature I would have loved for the NES Classic, but alas.
Well, maybe Sega will do what Nintendo don't in the future.
I hope
so. But for now, let's get on to that list.
All right. You want to kick us off, Ian, with your first pick?
So my number one, and this is not necessarily in any ranking, but it's the first one on the list here, is
we're going alphabetically in each of our lists.
Is pretty much the most iconic character of Sega that isn't Sonic, Alex Kidd.
Yes.
I think Alex Kidd is due for a revival because his games are funky. They're fun in that kind of surrealist Mario sort of way, but they aren't quite as tight as Mario or Sonic or a lot of the other iconic platformers. I think if we were to see a new Alex Kidd developed with, the past 20, 30 years of experience in making games, we can have something really, really neat.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. You could definitely do like a modern indie platformer style take on him, and maybe tighten up his controls a little bit because he's a little wonky in the old Master System games.
Yeah, a little floaty.
Yeah, I haven't played the Genesis game. Is that Enchanted Castle, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I would love to see, if we're doing pie in the sky here, I'd love to see a Banjo-Kazooie styled Alex Kidd revival. Because Alex Kidd had lots of really big open spaces to explore, and they didn't really feel like they had much direction or cohesion to them. They were just kind of there, at least my personal experience. So give it that kind of Banjo-Kazooie open world. There's lots of things to do and find and explore in vertical and horizontal spaces. Have that big old fist pop out to wall up various critters. Have your rock, paper, scissors mini games. Get that gyrocopter flying around. Get your motorcycle zooming. If only I knew how to model and code and do everything.
And Alex Kidd would be a lot of fun. Did I tell you how happy Sonic meeting Alex Kidd in the comics during the crossover made me? It made me very happy. It was one of those watershed moments of like, yeah, this is right.
Excellent.
Yes. Now my first game is probably a little bit more obscure, lesser known. Talking about Alicia Dragoon. This game is, first of all, a lot of my picks are due to their excellent soundtrack. And,
I wonder why.
And this would be one of those picks. It is also a very good game, though. It's a side-scrolling action platformer. You play as Alicia, and she is trying to defeat an evil wizard. And she has all of these animal compatriots to help her out. And the action is pretty crazy. The game looks really good for a 16-bit game. There's I think Alicia's main attack was shooting lightning, and then there's a screen clearing attack that's just lightning blasting all over the screen. She's kind of like a sorceress. She has all these awesome magic powers and these animal friends that help her out. So it's a really fun game, and I like it a lot. And the music is great. So if anything, just check out the music to Alicia Dragoon, because it's some good stuff.
Did it get any sequels, or was it a one-off?
Nope, that was a one-off. It's not a very common game. It's very expensive. It's one of the more rare Sega Genesis releases. They did kind of change the art style from the Japanese release to the Eastern release, or to the Western release. They did make it more like a, comic book fantasy kind of barbarian sword and sorcery style for the cover art, while in Japan it's obviously anime.
Yeah.
Just straight up anime. And the graphics in the game are still very anime-esque, so but it is a very good game, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's actually a Game Arts and Studio Gainax production, so
Oh, wow.
it's really good, and it looks great because of that. So it has some really nice sprites going on in there. So check it out.
Number 2 on my list that I wish would rise from its grave is Altered Beast. And not particularly because it's overly fun.
It's not a very good game.
It has aged like milk.
It is poor, yes.
But the concept of it, that you are this centurion resurrected to fight the forces of literal undead evil, and that as you progress, you just become more manly until you become some kind of ferocious beast that throws Hadokens and does crazy spinny kicks. It's just so ridiculous.
It is. I love the concept. The execution is not great, but the concept is awesome. So,
and they've tried to get Altered Beast to work again and again over the years, and something about it just doesn't click. I don't know what it is, whether it's too fast-paced to be a beat-em-up, whether it's got too many enemies going on to be a thoughtful platformer. I don't really know what it is about Altered Beast that doesn't quite work, but I wish it did.
Yes.
It'd make for a fantastic comic.
That's true, actually. It could very easily be a good comic book.
And I know that we've discussed this on the show before, but I would love to see it reimagined in a God of War style action platformer.
Yeah.
Where you just tear through, and the better you do, just like before, the bigger and snarlier you get. And keep the story bare bones. I'm all for pushing the medium and using video games to create art and to tell story in a way that no other medium can. But I also want something where I run around as a big werewolf man tearing demons in half.
You know what? You just need a silly beat 'em up, really. Come on, you don't need to do anything fancy with it.
Exactly.
You can just do
something elegant and simplicity.
Yeah, you could do like an Altered Beast remake in this kind of in the gameplay style of like what's that PlayStation 3 game, Dragon's Crown, which would be really cool, I think. So yeah, or God of War style for you if you're going 3D. Either way would work, I think. The next game on my list is from Konami. Now, Castlevania. It's a long-running series. There was only ever one game released on the Genesis from the series, though, and that is Bloodlines. This is another pick for its soundtrack. Really great music. It's got some classic remixes of Castlevania classics, but it's also got its own excellent original music. And it's one of the first games in the series where you don't play as a Belmont, I believe.
I was going to say, which protagonist was this?
This is the one who's like the Castlevania Bloodlines, I think, is the one that has the closest ties to the original Bram Stoker's Dracula book.
Oh wow!
Because I think the main character in the book, other than Dracula, well, he's the villain, so I think the main protagonist had a last name of Morse, and you play as a Morse, a guy named Morse. His last name is Morse. I can't remember his first name, but it is another really good game. It looks really good. It plays like a Castlevania game. You've got your classic vampire killer whip, and it's a little bit different, and then it kind of starts to set the stage a bit for the Metroidvania stuff. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. So it's a really good game, and it's called Vampire Killer in Japan because they really wanted to confuse people and have like 5 Castlevania games, 5 different Castlevania games, all named Vampire Killer in Japan. So I don't know. It's weird.
It beats out the casual fans from the hardcore ones.
Let's see. Okay, Quincy Morris is the original, is the book's... that was the protagonist of the book, Quincy Morris. And then later on in this game, you play as John Morris. So this is the one that sort of ties in the Bram Stoker's Dracula book with the Castlevania games, which is kind of silly, but at the same time is kind of cool. So I'll allow it.
Now, earlier I said that Alter Beast would make for a good comic. Now, when you combine the two concepts, you get number 3 on my list, Comic Zone.
Which would make a good comic. Oh, wait, it already is.
Exactly. And I kind of wish they would do that again. It was a really neat way of moving from stage to stage, and I don't think anything else has even attempted something like it.
I want to say there was some kind of Xbox Live arcade game that was did kind of that, but I don't think it was executed nearly as well, because Comic Zone's a lot of fun, although it is hard.
It's just brutally hard. I got maybe to like the second level for the first time ever. I'm so proud of me.
Oh man, I don't think I've even gotten that far. It is brutal.
And it's a very pretty game.
It is.
It has
looks really
aged
good.
Very, very well.
It was a very late release for the Genesis, wasn't it? I remember seeing it about
I think one of the last titles.
Yeah, I remember seeing it pretty late in a Best Buy kiosk or something. Yeah,
I mean, it's as 90s as all get out.
Yeah,
but...
well, it's 1995. It is the 90s. We're solidly in the 90s at this point.
But it's really, if you have a collection that it's on, it's definitely worth a pick up and play, because it does a lot of neat new things, and aside from the absolutely punishing difficulty, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks good too. And it sounds good. Howard Drawson's music is great. He actually redid that for an album, a Comic Zone album. It's in full. He's got a full band with lyrics and everything for it, so it's really cool. It's called In the Zone, I believe, or that might be one of the names of the song. One of the song names. Next on my list, we got to have some fighting game action. So I'm going to go with Fatal Fury 2. Now, you could be like, why didn't you go with Street Fighter? Well, that's kind of an obvious choice. I love Street Fighter, don't get me wrong, but, Fatal Fury, King of Fighters, SNK needs more love. And I definitely quite enjoy Fatal Fury 2. So, yeah, another one with a great soundtrack. Really, really pretty graphics, of course. Excellent fighting gameplay. It's just kind of sets the stage for King of Fighters, because King of Fighters is pretty much a crossover of Fatal Fury and other SNK fighting game series that I can't remember the name of right now. Let's see. Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, that's it. Yeah. I knew it was fighting something. I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember exactly. So Art of Fighting is also really good though too. So yeah, gotta show my love for SNK. So Fatal Fury 2 is my pick.
Number 4 on my list is kind of got fighting involved in that you're fighting with the controls. That's right, it's Echo the Dolphin.
I didn't think it was that bad.
I don't know, because...
Maybe I need to go back to it.
Echo is one of those iconic games. When you think classic Sega, you think Echo.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And it remains a very, very pretty game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting and even innovative in its extremely minimalistic HUD. Now, with all these games with health meters and scores and point counters and blah, 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 all Echo really had was your health and your air. Mm-hmm. But on the downside, it was really obtuse. And I feel like it doesn't really play very well as a game, but it's interesting as an experience.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that the hitboxes need to be tweaked, because I got caught inside so many stinking crabs and walls.
I don't think I ever got past like stage 2. I could never get past the boss. Just like this big giant octopus type deal. I think that's stage 2.
Yeah, about that. The trick to him is you have to swim really slow.
Oh, well.
Not too slow, but not slow.
It's been over a decade since I've tried to play the game again, so yeah, level 2 is harrowing because it's really easy to run out of air, and there's only these little pockets that you can find in the caves.
No. But if we're making a big compilation Genesis system thingy, we'd be remiss to not at least mention Echo.
Right. No, it's definitely a game worthy of inclusion. It's just really tough and a little bit weird. But it wouldn't be the 90s if it weren't a little weird.
I suppose.
Yes. Next up, on my side, we got Gauntlet 4. I'm including this one purely on the basis of it having 4-player multiplayer. Simultaneous. I don't know how that would work in a mini console, but whatever. You can figure that out.
Controller splitter. They had those things back in the day. We can make them now.
Sure. We could do that. It's a really fun game. If you haven't played Gauntlet, it's a top-down kind of dungeon crawler. Not really an RPG, but a little. There's not really any story so much as that you're just going around and killing stuff and trying to get as far as you can. And 4-player Gauntlet is a ton of fun, and it's good. So that's why it's in here.
I can't remember. Did it have friendly fire, or were you immune to your buddy's attacks?
I honestly can't remember either. I think there was a battle mode where you could fight each other, but I don't think in the main game you could kill each other.
I'm just having vague flashbacks of lots of friends yelling at each other, but that might have just been, we need you here, but I'm over here, but we need this over there now.
Yeah, that might have been it. Either way, a great game and a good multiplayer experience, so I had to throw it in here. Gauntlet 4.
In the vein of dungeon crawling, number 5 on my list is one that I don't think gets a lot of attention, Fatal Labyrinth.
I've actually never heard of it.
It's a very, very basic roguelike dungeon crawler.
Okay.
Where the inputs, you don't really even have a dedicated attack button. It's you walk towards the enemy, and if you have something equipped, you attack with it.
Mm-hmm.
The dungeons, as far as I can tell, are randomly generated. The loot drops are randomly generated. Different levels will drop different stuff. But you are very much at the mercy of what the game wants to happen. And part of it is frustrating because there are some very unfair scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, wait, you didn't realize you could overeat? Have fun stumbling around, fatty. Or you don't know what this color ring does and try it on? Oh, look, you're now starving to death. Hope you find food the next level. But at the same time, it adds that kind of Dark Soul masochism to it, I guess, where you're thrown into impossible odds, and if you can find a way to overcome, you feel pretty good about yourself. And because it's such a limited system, it feels like you've managed to trick that wily computer.
Very nice. Yeah, I haven't even heard of it before you put it on your list. I'm like, that's the only game on your list that I've never heard of. We're just like, what's that? So, sounds pretty cool. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Up next on my list, we got a classic from the legendary Treasure, developed by those freaking geniuses. And I could have gone with Dynamite Headdy or the McDonald's game that they did that's actually really good. It's this weird licensed tie-in thing that is absolutely gorgeous and plays wonderfully, but it's a McDonald's game, so it's like, what? Why is this so good? Oh, it's by Treasure. Okay. Basically, think like the graphical style of, if you want like a modern comparison, maybe like Freedom Planet. It's very similar to that.
Yeah, I could see that.
So Gunstar Heroes is an excellent game. It's a platforming shooter, basically side-scrolling shooter, where you're up against enormous robots, huge bosses, lots of action on screen all at once. It's kind of similar to Metal Slug or Contra. It's very frantic, fast-paced, and I enjoy it quite a lot. another game with a fantastic soundtrack on my list. So that's a running theme we got going on here. But I mean, come on, Gunstar Heroes. I had to include this. If I'm going to include a treasure game, it's going to be It's going to be Gunstar Heroes. So that's my pick.
Number 6 on my list, and kind of falls into the same general category of dungeon crawling murder hobos, is Golden Axe.
It's a beat 'em up.
And when I say Golden Axe, I'm kind of doing the whole trilogy here all in one go, because as much as it advances here and there, the basics are you are manly, and that goes for both men and women, manly, barbarianish type characters just slaughtering horrible other peoples and beating up dwarves for food and magic. And there's just something rewarding about tearing through all these characters. You can almost hear the 90s metal grinding in the background.
Well, you can, because that's actually the soundtrack. I was going to say,
talking about it.
Yeah, that Golden Axe theme is metal.
If you're not thinking Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice when you're playing his axe battler, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
You can play as a dwarf wearing Viking horns that throws lightning at things. You ride giant chicken dragons, fire-breathing velociraptors. I mean, come on.
You can play as a Red Sonja riff-off. Come on.
In later games, you are some kind of jaguar man who runs around pouncing on people. It's that bygone era of oiled pectorals and loincloths that we just don't see today.
No, we don't. We really should. We really should. Although I guess you could just play Dragon's Crown. It's kind of like that.
I suppose.
But it's not the same. It's not Golden Axe. It doesn't have that song. You know the song I'm talking about. The one that's also in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. Yes. Oh man, I do love that song so much. Speaking of games with good music, here's the next one from me. This is probably, actually almost certainly, the rarest, most difficult, and most expensive Sega Genesis game to find. I'm talking about Musha, or Musha Eliste if you're from Japan, because it's part of the Eliste series of shooters. This is kind of a scrolling, vertical scrolling shooter. Not really a space shooter, so much as I guess it's got more of like an Asian aesthetic to it. It's kind of weird. It's like this, like a historical Asian influence with giant mechs. So, that sounds pretty awesome, right?
I love all my historical mechs.
Yes.
And the Edo period Gundams were especially refined in their construction.
Absolutely. And essentially, one of my favorite things about this game was there was an interview. I was listening to an interview on another podcast with the composer, and he says that his intention with the soundtrack was to essentially compose a heavy metal suite. So the music in this game is just bonkers. It's insanity. It is that mid-90s, like, crazy guitar riffs just in your face all over the place. And it sounds really good despite, or maybe because it's on the Genesis. I'm not sure. Sometimes, the Genesis sounds really weird when you get kind of distorted. You get those weird guitar sounds, and some of them, I'm looking at you, Sonic Spinball option screen. But Musha just harnesses that and uses it so effectively musically. It's also a really fun shoot 'em up, but it is tough as nails. So I definitely want to put Musha on here, if only to drive the price of cartridges down, because $300+ for a single game is ludicrous.
Unless you're buying Breath of the Wild at launch on the Switch. Oh!
I just play it on the Wii U. It's fine. There's no difference.
Before we get too far off track, we're moving on to number 7 on my list, Phantasy Star, the original Phantasy Star.
That was on the Master System, I believe.
Yes, but this is kind of the catch-all Sega. Shut up.
Well, okay, we'll allow it on a technicality because there was the backwards compatible thing that you could plug on top of the Genesis that I'm completely forgetting the name of right now.
Thank you very much.
So yes, we'll allow it. It's a good game, though.
It's the start of the franchise. I wouldn't necessarily call it good in comparison to the rest of the Phantasy Stars.
Well, I say that it's good for its time.
It certainly had a lot of interesting ideas, and I'm still tickled that the dungeons were basically the screensavers from Windows 95, which is probably far too endearing to my heart, but whatever.
Yes.
And more so that it set the stage for what came after. I always love these series that start off so bare bones and basic, and then they get turned into some kind of sweeping epic. And you get to like the last one, and it looks back at these little plot points that meant nothing in the first game or couldn't be explored at all because of the limitations of the hardware at the time, and turns it into something. So it feels like it's a whole narrative start to finish. Yeah.
I also think it was kind of progressive because it was one of the, if not the first RPG to feature a female main character. I think she was the main protagonist character in that game, which is kind of cool for that era, especially back in the 8-bit days. So, very good pick. My next one comes from the lovely, jolly old land of the UK. I'm talking about Mega Turrican, or the Sega Genesis port of Turrican 3. Another one with an excellent soundtrack composed by Chris Hulsbeck. It's another kind of side-scrolling platformer shooter. Not as crazy insane as Gunstar Heroes, but just as tough. But it's another really pretty game, too. And also fantastic music. It just plays really solidly. It thankfully does not suffer from that Western airplane hangar syndrome, where all the levels are like massive, and they take place in these giant airplane hangars apparently because you keep going up and down and all over the place, just randomly. There's like no real sense of direction to it. I'm sure you've played some of these games, Ian, where there's just like, why is it just a big wide open space with platforms that go up and down and all over the place? There's just no reason for it. Mega Turrican is a lot more focused, a lot more concise, and I definitely appreciate it for that. So, Mega Turrican, great game.
Number 8 on my list is the redheaded stepchild cousin to Sonic. That's Rystar.
Rystar. I love this game.
Rystar is... I love it so very much, and I can't really pinpoint why. Maybe it's because it was a spin-off of the unused early Sonic concepts. Maybe because Rystar himself is just this neat character.
It's adorable.
Maybe it's the stretchy arm grapple mechanic. Maybe it's the fact that you beat things up by flinging yourself slingshot-like and hitting them with your face. Maybe it's the overwhelming epicness that is the greedy fight at the very end. Maybe it's the wacko soundtrack. I can't really pin it down, but just something about it feels like one of those, mascot platformers that stood out on its own when so many were trying to ape what Mario and Sonic were doing at the time.
Right. It seems more like I hate to use this word, but it's like a casual platformer. I know there were enemies and stuff in that game, but it seems like it was just kind of a pleasant experience. It's kind of like a Kirby game. Maybe that's what you might be thinking of. It's just pleasant. It's just nice. It's a lot of fun though.
And like Kirby, there's the occasional trap or enemy placement that makes you go, "Why are you so hard?"
Yeah.
But other than that,
yes, it's very good. I like Rystar. Now, on this theoretical Genesis Classic Edition, we do need a sports game. We need at least one.
I guess technically.
I technically have two, I guess, but this one is definitely a sports game. Now, it's not a licensed sports game. I'm talking about Mutant League Football.
I'll allow it.
Good, because it's an awesome game. Basically, it's football with mutant monsters. That's really it. I just love this game. It's super fun. You got some special abilities. But other than that, it's just a really solid game of football, too. So, I mean, if you're going to include a sports game, why not make it the one you play with mutants?
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, number 9 on my list is not Sonic 3 and Knuckles because somebody else claimed it for their list first.
You're welcome. We'll still talk about it. Don't worry.
So I have to go with what's easily second place, which is Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
I argued with myself over whether I wanted Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles because Sonic 2 is my first experience with the Sega Genesis and with Sonic ever. Mm-hmm. So it holds a very special place in my heart, but there's just something that knocks Sonic 3 and Knuckles slightly over the edge for me. So anyway, sorry.
With Sonic 2, it does so much to go beyond Sonic 1 that I think it stands out on its own as just the superior sequel. The graphics are tighter, the music is more iconic, arguably. The bosses are a little more inventive. Again, arguably. I'm sure there's diehard Sonic 1 fans out there that are just gnashing their teeth. But the sheer scope of it in comparison to Sonic 1. Mm-hmm. The inclusion of Super Sonic as that fun unlockable. Tails as a companion character. The fact that I like the Sonic 2 sprite a lot better than the Sonic 3 sprite.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, if you're going to make a sequel, this is how you do it. Everything's bigger, everything's better without it becoming cumbersome.
Yeah. The one thing, if there's one criticism I have of Sonic 2, it's that kind of going back to it today, it's a little bit unbalanced as far as the progression of the difficulty. Because once you get to, like, Mystic Cave, things just get ridiculous. There's some design decisions in that level that I'm just like, why did you do this? Why did you make a bottomless pit that nobody can get out of, that you have to die if you accidentally run down it? Or why is this just a bottomless hole that you just fall down? I know you're supposed to, it's a memorization game, but it's these really kind of awkward moments that I definitely love the first half of the game, but the second half kind of is a little bit frustrating. Although I do like the fact that they did put in Sky Chase as kind of a reprieve. Mm-hmm. I think Sky Chase makes a really nice reprieve from the slog that Metropolis and Mystic Cave and Oil Ocean kind of are. So. See,
I enjoyed Mystic Cave just for the music and the aesthetic. I'm one of those weird people who likes Hilltop Zone. Go figure.
Are we going to get into this now? Because I love Hilltop Zone. I'm not joking. Some people, there's like, I see so many complaints of like, oh man, I hate Hilltop Zone. It's so stupid. It's just a reskin of Emerald Hill and the music is weird and crap. And I'm just like,
music's weird, but it's like, in a funky, fresh kind of way.
I'm just like, man, that music's great. It's this super awesome jazz funk. It's awesome.
And Green Hill's all horizontal. Hilltop is all vertical. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's got these underground caves and all this really cool stuff. I like it
a lot. It's
not
as fast, but it's a little more meticulous. Okay, we're going to spend an entire episode.
Yeah,
let's move on to yours.
Okay. My next one is an arcade classic. We're talking about Pac-Mania.
Wackle, 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 wackle.
I love me some Pac-Man. This is kind of like a 2.5D isometric Pac-Man, where Pac-Man can jump and the ghost can jump. So that's kind of weird, and it's really annoying when the ghosts jump into you when you're trying to jump. But it's a fun game, and it's a good game of Pac-Man, so that's why it's in here. And I think the Genesis version would be my personal favorite, even over the arcade, just because you can play it at home.
Exactly.
Yes.
Moving into the double digits, my number 10 pick here is Space Harrier. By virtue of it's just so weird. I mean, it looks really neat still to this day.
Yes.
And it's frantic, but it's fair. All the stuff flying at the screen, you can shoot it, and it feels rewarding. The sound balance on the way that your bullets come out and how they hit things just feels nice. It doesn't make a lick of sense, but it doesn't need to. You're a dude with a jetpack and some kind of plasma cannon, and you're blowing up cyclopean mastodons and Easter Island heads, and sometimes you're heading to a city, and sometimes there's mushrooms, and it doesn't matter because you're harrying space.
Yes. And it's got one of the most uplifting and victorious sounding songs of all time.
It does.
That
it
main
just
music.
Feel good.
Yeah, it's one of those songs that's just like, yeah,
I'm flying around. I'm harrying space.
it's just that it feels like that weird 80s cheese where it's like this uplifting cheesy moment in the finale of a movie or something. It's got that kind of sound to it.
That's the whole
But that's the
game.
point. Yes, yes. It's great. I do love Space Harrier a lot. It definitely needs to be on this thing. My next game is kind of a fighting game, kind of a sports game, kind of a wrestling game. I'm talking about Saturday Night Slam Masters. This one has Mike Hagar in it from Final Fight. So there's an interesting crossover going on there. And, it's just a really fun, silly wrestling game, fighting game style kind of thing. It's by Capcom, so, the fight mechanics are great. It's got a little bit of a Street Fighter feel to it, Street Fighter look. And some of the characters from this game have also appeared in Street Fighter games. So I guess this is the closest I can get to having a Street Fighter representation on this console. But it's a fun wrestling game, and I have fun with wrestling games sometimes. So Saturday Night Slam Masters is, I'd say it's a solid game. So
joining the ranks of our shooter platformers on this list is Vector Man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to specify the first Vector Man, because the second one wasn't so great. I don't know.
Nah.
And the first one certainly has its issues. Well, they both do, in that they throw new mechanics at you without any kind of forewarning or really clear explanation. But the whole run around, shoot things as just some grunt who's a trash collector, and oh no, now there's a big robot with a bomb for a head that's trying to destroy everybody. I gotta take care of this. That's just something charming about Vector Man.
I do like it. It's another one of those late release Genesis games that kind of got overlooked a little bit. Not super overlooked. I know people know what it is, but
Right.
But it's definitely one of those that it's like Comic Zone. It flew under the radar of a lot of people at the time, I think, because they were like, "Ooh, 3D graphics," and the Genesis is just sitting here like, "But I have games too."
And while I'd say the soundtrack isn't exactly memorable, I think the sound design itself is really satisfying. Just the sound of the shots he makes.
The sound
makes you want to hit that shoot button a lot.
Yeah, the sound is really good. I do agree with that. The music is not memorable, but it's also pretty well produced, so it's kind of got that electronica vibe. Oh, Vector Man, really good. My next pick is a classic. We've already talked about it just a tad. Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I'm sorry I stole this away from you, Ian, but I had
it's
to.
It's okay.
I had to.
It's okay.
I had to. I couldn't just choose Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles because, as far as I'm concerned, they are one game.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. Exactly.
They go together. There are certain things about Sonic 3, certain design elements about Sonic 3 that they removed from Sonic 3 and Knuckles that I do like, but overall, I think Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the best way to experience both games.
And like Sonic 2 before, it does how you're supposed to do a sequel. It's bigger, it's better, it adds more stuff without it losing what the core gameplay is about.
Right. It's, once again, fairly minimal story, but it gets the point across, and it introduces Knuckles. And
that alone. Like, if we were ranking the games,
yes,
that's number one, because it's got Knuckles. It's got my boy.
Yes. And it also bore the "and Knuckles" meme. So, I mean, you gotta have and Knuckles. Or Knuckles the Echidna in and Knuckles.
Now, the next one on my list was actually the very first game I tried to plug into the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge to see what would happen. The answer is Blue Spheres.
Imagine if it actually worked.
Oh, man, I wanted to play Knuckles in this game so bad. Oh, it would have been great. But as it is, it's one of the best licensed games, I think, of the era. That's X-Men 2: The Clone Wars. Now, this one was such a step beyond the original X-Men on the Genesis, which did some neat stuff, but I was never wholly satisfied with it. With X-Men 2, the characters who had any kind of projectile powers, you could charge up the beam. There were little things like Wolverine, if you held still, would actually regenerate health. This is the first time that was ever shown in any of the X-Men tie-in games.
Yeah, which is really weird that didn't happen sooner, but...
It had a very weird intro level where it just dropped you in as a random character, and you had to navigate the opening stage with them. Didn't like that character? Reset button. And my brother and I probably pushed the limits of the system, hitting reset until we got the two characters that we wanted at the same time. Nightcrawler's teleportation felt really, really good, if it makes any sense. And the fact that you could actually teleport around certain doors and certain walls that other characters couldn't get through was really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Magneto was playable for the first time, and I was really hyped about it, but I never felt like he actually played that well. But it had one of the coolest final boss gauntlets. And if you weren't freaked out by the Brood Queen, I don't know what's wrong with you. That was a scary monster. That nasty creature.
This is one game I really need to sit down and play more of. I've heard good things, so...
It's tough, too. It's not overly difficult, and it can get a little tedious here and there. But for the most part, it's fair. I guess towards the end, it gets a little bit sloggy, but overall, for what it did right, it was really right.
As long as it's better than Adamantium Attack, I'm okay. Yeah. Now, that would go on our crappy 30 Genesis games list. Actually, you could probably come up with more crappy games than that one. Although that one is pretty bad.
Now, since you put the show together, Kyle, you had a longer list than I did, so I'm just going to let you drive from here on out.
All right, I'll make this quick to wrap it up, because we're actually might have one of the longest episodes of this show on our hand here because of this, but...
Because you can't contain all the goodness of a Genesis on one episode.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. So I'll wrap mine up real quick here. These last 6 games that I got. Oh, and then maybe I'll just run down real quick of my honorable mentions, because I had too many games that couldn't contain it. I couldn't even contain it. So my next one, Super Hang-On. Classic Sega arcade racing game. I had, several different choices for racing games that I could have put on here. Virtua Racing, Super Monaco GP, but I went with Super Hang-On because it's the one with the best music. It added in a career mode that adds a lot of depth to the game that wasn't originally there in the arcade version. And overall, it's just a really solid motorcycle racing game, so that's why it's on here. Next on my list, Streets of Rage 2. I had to put a Streets of Rage game on here, and it had to be the best one. Streets of Rage 2. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Takes place in kind of this dark, cyberpunk-esque future city. Really awesome. Great soundtrack by Yuzo Koshiro. I don't think I really need to espouse the greatness of Streets of Rage to this audience, but it's just a really solid beat 'em up. After that, we got Thunder Force 3, side-scrolling, horizontal shooter. I think there's some vertical sections in this too, or maybe I'm thinking of Thunder Force 4. But Thunder Force 3, another game with some really solid music. The whole series, really, of Thunder Force games. It is a space shooter, so you're flying around in a spaceship shooting stuff. And it's a lot of fun. Ys 3, Wanderers from Ys, is next on my list. This is kind of throwing a bone to the RPG guys and gals out there. This is kind of a side-scrolling RPG, so it's actually called a Metroidvania game, and that's probably the best equivalent I can think of, even though this was before Castlevania Symphony of the Night even existed. So it's a side-scrolling action RPG, and I've played the remake for PC a little bit, and I definitely prefer that one, but this one's still fun too, so Ys 3. And then next on my list, I had to throw this one in here, even though I already have some good beat-em-ups. I had to throw in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Hyperstone Heist.
Cowabunga!
Yeah! Now this is kind of the Genesis version of Turtles in Time, except not really. This was the era where ports weren't always ports. Sometimes they were just completely different games using similar or the same assets. And that's what this game kind of did. It uses a lot of the music from Turtles in Time, and definitely the style and graphics, the gameplay, very similar. But just a really solid game. I don't think it's quite on par with Turtles in Time as far as just the overall quality of the game, but it's still really solid and a ton of fun to play through. So I would definitely want to include it on this hypothetical system. After that, Afterburner 2, I had to throw this in here. I know it's another flying shooter game, and I've got quite a few of those on my list, but this one's like 3D-ish. And that music, though. That
seems to be one of the genres that really found a home on the Genesis.
That I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of really solid shooters, so I think it makes sense to include that. And then finally, throwing another bone to the RPG folks, Phantasy Star 4.
We came full circle. Do you see what we did there?
Yes, we did. We did. So, that's my list, and Ian's list, of 30 awesome Sega Genesis classics that we would include on a Sega Genesis Mini, or Sega Mega Drive Mini, maybe. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it both. The Genesis...
The Sega Mini.
The Sega Mega Mini Drive Genesis. Oh, I also have some honorable mentions. I'll throw those out here real quick. Championship Pro-Am, which is an RC Pro-Am sequel. Contra Hardcore, a great Contra game that's tough as heck. Truxton, another really awesome space shooter. Outrun, of course, it's Outrun. Strider, and King of the Monsters, which is a giant kaiju fighting game. And if you have not played it, you really should. And that's it.
Now we're going to dive into the Q&A. First up is our priority Q&A. If you want to get your question answered before everybody else, head over to patreon.com/BumbleKast, toss us $5, and you will get put into the priority queue. Kyle, who do we have this week?
All right. This first question comes from Chris A. What would happen if the realities from the pre-SGW and post-SGW were merged into a new reality?
For those who don't know, and if you're listening to the show, you probably do, but still, SGW stands for Super Genesis Wave, the big continuity thing that we use to reboot the book. And the answer to that is, I don't know. Simply because it begs the question of how the two are brought together. The reason why we can't touch the pre-Genesis Wave stuff is a big factor of why it's not there anymore. So, it's a question of how much of the pre-stuff is coming into the post stuff. But for the sake of the question, let's do this little fantasy realm thing where everything that was before the reboot is accessible again. I would say that it would be kind of cherry-picked. Take, the best of the pre-wave stuff and find new places for it in the post-wave stuff. Or maybe not even try to address that really muddy continuity mess and just reintegrate them with new versions in the post-wave continuity. But in terms of, what exactly would happen, who knows? Because there's too many questions, too many unknown variables.
Yeah. Next question comes from Sam Cybercat. Super excited to hear you're working on Jughead.
Thank you very much.
What do you think it is about Jughead that's made him such a standout character since the Archie reboot?
I think it's the same thing that made him stand out in regular Archie, is that he does not care. There's so much drama and relationships and shenanigans flying around Riverdale, and Jughead is just this kind of center of calm and sarcasm that just kind of goes through it. That, and we both share a probably unhealthy affinity for burgers. He's got a better metabolism than I do, but I don't know. Out of all the Archie cast, Jughead was always the one I was always the most entertained by. So the fact that I get to write Jughead now is actually a lot of a treat.
I think it's really fun and funny that they have kept the crown in the new continuity and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, I know you really do. You really have to. But it's still kind of silly thinking about it in a modern context. Like, why would anybody wear a freaking crown like that? But who cares? It's Jughead.
I think, well, one, it's Jughead. He wears whatever he wants. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
And two, I could almost see it looping around to becoming kind of whatever comes after hipsters. Whatever the young kids are doing these days.
Yeah.
I could see the crown becoming a thing unironically. Or it starts ironic, becomes unironic, then becomes a fad, then dies out, and would come right back to where we were.
Yeah. Well, it'll be the 2040s, and people will be wearing these crowns instead of the 1940s. And our last priority question comes from Fancy Fool. Since we won't see them for a while, what kind of relationships do the Freedom Fighters who haven't interacted yet have? Like, what is Cream like with Bunny or Antoine and vice versa, and how do they view each other?
That's something I want to explore with the future of the book. It's way too broad a question to handle in just the Q&A. That could probably be an entire episode in its own right.
True.
But when you get down to it, they're all friends, so they all have the things that make them click and the things that don't necessarily click.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Antoine becoming completely bored with whatever Rotor is babbling on about, but Rotor would not really have any interest in getting in Antoine's way in the kitchen. He learned that already. But you toss in a really cool sword between the two of them, and they'll both geek out over for like an hour.
Yeah.
You can have very interesting conversations between Nicole and Bunny over the aspects of being semi-artificial beings and what it's like to deal with being partially organic or not partially organic. The bridge between what is life like as a solid light projection and life as being somewhat mechanical. The number of scenarios you could put together is absolutely staggering. And that's why I hope that we'll be able to get into it in the future.
I do like that latter idea, to be honest with you. I think you could build something really good with that.
Well, that's the beauty of the Freedom Fighters, is that even though Sonic has to be the star, even though the Sega cast needs to be the breadwinners, more or less, of the plot lines,
yeah,
any of the Freedom Fighters can be plucked into and placed into the group or the scenario, and you have something interesting and dynamic between them all.
Definitely, yeah.
I know that we've kind of fallen into a couple of safe spaces here and there on usual pairings, in part because those are fan favorites, in part because we just need to move the story along and we don't have time to delve into any of the nuance here or there. But overall, we have this rich cast, and I really hope to delve into it more.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into some standard Q&A from the enormous queue of questions that we have. Thank you all for sending those in, but man, they're backed up quite a bit. So if we don't get to your questions soon, just hold on. Don't worry, we've got it. We have it. It might be a little while. This first question comes from Richard V. Do you think a modern game not featuring Sonic would serve the franchise well, akin to how Luigi's Mansion is considered one of the best Mario games? Maybe a more adventure-based platformer with Knuckles or Silver, or etc.?
I would love to see the Sonic franchise branch out like that.
We talked about a Knuckles game a while ago, and I definitely think that would be great.
I'd kill for a Knuckles game.
A really good action game, not just a treasure hunting game.
By kill, I mean step on an ant or something. But, I want that Knuckles game.
Sure.
I think Shadow's game would have worked if it had been more refined and had another 6 months of development time on it. That thing was so rushed. Silver would be a fantastic game because he was my favorite part of 06. The puzzle platforming with the psychokinesis was actually a lot of fun when it worked. And I honestly think that a survival horror light-esque Amy Rose game like her Sonic Adventure game could really work. Like the puzzle platforming elements that are kind of akin to Silver, the fact that she's not in canon supposed to be as strong as the others, despite the fact that she knocks Zero clear across the egg carrier. We're not going to get into that. Point being, something that's a little less focused on speedy platforming and more on thoughtful platforming and maybe some light puzzles and light combat could be really interesting. And darn it, I want my Chow Raisin game. Cream's Chow Ranch. Sega, make it happen. I don't care if it's one of those money sink cell phone games. Let me raise my water babies.
Actually, that would be a perfect mobile game.
Trade, race, battle, all the Chow, all the time. Come on!
This is Pokemon Go Chow Edition?
Yes!
Just catch them in augmented reality.
I had to spend $5 to get a ruby egg? Fine, I want my sparkly red Chow.
Yeah, jeez.
Limited time edition Knuckles Chow? Okay, how much?
Oh, jeez.
I am a consumer. Let me consume.
Oh, jeez. Capitalism. What are you doing? Stop! Next question comes from Andrew D. In regards to Sonic Genesis, was there a miscommunication for the battle in Final Zone between you and the artist? There was some sort of shield around Sonic that was apparently a bad thing, but it didn't seem to affect Sonic in any way. Rotor was also able to remove the shield by doing something outside the room. Am I right in assuming this was a miscommunication, where you asked to have a shield around the room trapping Sonic and Eggman, but the artist accidentally interpreted it as a shield around Sonic? Regardless, what is the canon of this, and how was that shield harmful at all? Just what was the point of that shield?
Yeah, that was a bit of miscommunication between me and Patrick Spaziante. It was meant to be the force field that drops down and blocks Sonic from Eggman when he first enters the zone and gets dropped into the Labyrinth Zone Act-styled final part of Scrap Egg that leads to Final Zone, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what happened, but Pat read it as the green energy shield, just the shield item. And it got all the way to the final issue without being caught by, I forget who was editing at the time. And I was like, well, oops. So it goes. The canon is what was printed. It was a shield that was, I guess, supposed to trap Sonic. It didn't work. Sonic used it to his advantage, and Rotor turned it off. Genesis is all part of the pre-Super Genesis wave, so it's kind of off in the closet now. We don't need to worry about it.
But it's right over there on my shelf. I'm looking at it.
Just let it be.
It's a real thing. It even has your name on it twice because I made you sign it when I handed it to you when you were here.
Next question. Moving on.
What are you talking about?
Moving on.
Okay. Boosalarian Theme asks, are human Mobian relationships / crushes allowed, or are they going to be put under the rug and left to the fans to have fun with?
I'm going to let the fans do whatever they want with that because I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole.
Do that.
I have seen the arguments that say that because these are cartoon animals and not full out-and-out furries or anthropomorphic creatures, and because the universe treats them both as fully sentient, sapient beings on equal terms, that it would make sense that within that reality, a human-Mobian relationship wouldn't be bestiality. I've seen the argument. I agree. It makes some sense. But that's not what the casual reader is going to see. They're going to see animal with people, and that's just, no, ew, wrong, bad. I understand that there's deeper thinking to it, and people who are very passionate about the level of depth and lore to it want it to be explored with that sincerity and that depth. I get it. I do. But at the same time, this is not a furry book. This is not an anthro book. This is not my book. This is Sega's property. And thus, it is not mine to do with willy-nilly. And if the reactions to the Elise and Sonic kiss from Sonic 06 are any indication, the vast majority of the audience does not want that kind of intermingling. But if you are a fan and you want to do whatever shipping you want to do, go nuts. Go to town. I can't stop you. Have fun.
Or you could just do what you do and don't bother with relationships at all.
There's that too.
Or very few, very, very few relationships. But come on. Everybody knows that Sally Cole is the real ship.
Oh, if only people could. We're not even going to go down that road.
Too late. We already did. Oh, man. This
is going to wrap up our extra long episode number 38. Kyle, do you have anything to close the show out with?
Of course. You can check me out over at KyleJCRB on Twitter. You can also find me over at kngi.org, where you can find archived episodes of this show and many others, including my regular show Game Fuel, which streams live every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on 8bitx.com. If you're looking for awesome video game music remixes, arrangements, all that good stuff, head on over there and check it out.
If you're looking for more about me, go over to BumbleKing.com. Also check out the Bumble calendar, because the Toronto Comic-Con is coming up in 2 weeks, and I will be there. So check out the Bumble calendar for dates and times and all that happy stuff. Otherwise, go over to Twitter at IanVunBKC and see whatever I'm tweeting about at the time.
And let's not forget to give a big shout out to our awesome supporters on Patreon.
Absolutely. We're going to give a big thanks to Daniel H., Zephyr Flame, Chris A., Damo, you,
Damo Arigato,
John B., Sam Cybercat, Deo Smiles, Mike B., Fancy Fool, Kyle T., Samuel P., Justin G., Jennifer R., Daniel L., Candy for now, Andrew F., John M., Yes, Yavanovich 9X, Alex B., and James K.
Candy for now.
That's going to wrap us up for the BumbleKast. We will see you in 2 weeks, and don't miss out BumbleKast Gaming next Monday. So until then, have a good one.
Hey, thanks for listening to the BumbleKast. If you like the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and consider supporting us on Patreon. We have some great rewards, as well as big plans to make the show even better. Also, rate and review the show on iTunes. It gets more folks listening and really helps us out, so we definitely appreciate it. Original music by Ken Coda Snyder, used with permission. Find more of his music at bc.s3m.us and find the theme song at noisechanradio.bandcamp.com. Available as a pay-what-you-want download. Candy. I don't know where this is coming from. I like candy. Every time you say candy, I'm just like, candy.
Well, candy is good.
Yes, I do love candy. We both love candy. It's probably not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing, but that's okay. That's okay. Well, maybe it's mentally healthy. Like, it makes you feel good when you're eating it. But physically, it's maybe not.
So do a lot of things, but they ain't good for you.
Physically. My mind went to places it probably shouldn't have when you said
not
that.
On this
I
show.
don't know why.
No.
Oh man, we are not on this show. We're not on the show anymore. We're off the show. Never mind Ignore the man behind the curtain who still hasn't pushed the stop recording button.